and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis the 13th. Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head. My shop niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day prepping America overseas. Pension for the workers, nigga please. Embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement. I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut. Foreclosure, big holes at the tenement. I twist words like a speech impediment. I hope you got good credit, bitch. If not, better get a new job with benefits. While I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with. New money buys brand new carrots. My old money bunch of great grandparents. You got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya. I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me a billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
And we are live. Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J. Tonight, we have a good show in store for you guys. We are going to be talking about Syria in depth again. And this show, I guess, mainly we're going to be talking about the 106 killed at Deir el-Zor on September 17th, where the United States accidentally struck the Syrian Arab Army, saying that they mistook them for ISIS. And we're going to be talking a lot about Syria in depth right now. And we're getting closer to this election. We have the emails, new emails, scandal coming out. And, you know, I think all the scandals that came out about Hillary Clinton recently, and all these other allegations, all these other things that came out, and the fact that Americans just don't seem to care, and that the popularity numbers don't really change. You know, these polls still continue having Clinton 3, 4 points ahead, 5 points ahead, shows the fact that this election's a sham. And just like any other presidential election we've had for a long time, it's a sham. We've had so many scandals, from the email scandal in July to the scandals about racist, you know, there's racist rhetoric that she used in her emails, you know, referring to these people as Taco Bowl sect of the voter population, or the ridiculousness of the deplorables comments, pretty much labeling, you know, you think that would upset more people when a quarter of the United States population, I mean, not quarter, but she said half of Trump supporters, which is probably still good 15% of the population, more than 15% of the population. More than 15% of the population are deplorables, according to her. But that didn't piss off, really, people as much as, you know, I guess the media just seems to have this misrepresentation. But even when we've had foreign leaders, for example, when Hugo Chavez called Bush a donkey, was considered so undiplomatic. And looking at the way they represent, or how the media represents politics, and with Donald Trump, obviously, he's the one that's rigged for the lose. He's the one that's supposed to lose this election. I mean, the way that they've shown it is that they've shown Trump that no matter what he does, there's always some kind of purpose to it. That, you know, Trump has a lot of female employees at his company. They're going to say that that's because he wants to bang them. He has black friends. They're political toys for him for him to say that he's friendly with black people. He has Latin supporters, but those Latin supporters are probably paid by him, or that those Latin supporters might work for his company and are scared to support anybody else. You know, but Hillary Clinton, literally, you know, we have all these allegations that you think would be taken more seriously by people about what Bill Clinton, what she did to these women that supposedly Bill Clinton sexually assaulted. And the fact is that she silenced them when she's the one that says that we should listen to all victims of sexual assault, which is a very true statement. We should listen to all victims of sexual assault and believe them, because it's a very serious topic. But when it comes out of her mouth, and when it comes out of somebody that supports Saudi Arabia, or in Saudi Arabia, rape of women is so common there, and it's the punishment for a woman just even flirting with another man is, I think, death. So it's also a country where she's claimed herself to be a supporter of gay rights. This is a country who will be killed for being gay. And this is one of her top donors of Saudi Arabia. And Qatar and all these other countries that also have very similar punishments. But she also is the same one that calls Bashar al-Assad an evil dictator. But in Assad's Syria, minorities are treated with respect. And as you see, his army is fighting for these minorities, while the people that she wants to fund are killing those minorities. The Kurdish, even, while they misrepresent all the time on our media, saying that the Kurdish are being supported by the United States government and the Kurdish are being supported by the rebels and the Kurdish are against the Assad regime. No. There is very few Kurds, I think, that truthfully believe that a life under a rebel-controlled regime in the future is actually any better than life under the Assad regime. Because at least under the Assad regime, they're not going to be killed, and they're going to be treated with respect. The only thing is that they might not get their independence that they wanted, but they're definitely not going to get if the rebels are in charge. And in fact, they'll be probably ethnically cleansed, much like what Saddam did to the Kurds under the United States support will happen under a rebel-controlled regime inside of Syria. A lot of the Kurds there have now accepted that they're going to have to side with Assad, and a lot of them, I think, are enthusiastic supporters of Assad because of the reasons I've listed. Is that the fact is that he actually cares about the minorities in his country, the Christians, the Kurdish, the Palestinians, all these different people that inside Syria that the rebels obviously don't respect, and that they're, the terrorists really is what we should call them. As they've put Christians on crosses, they've crucified Christians on the streets of Syria. They've used chemical weapons. The evidence seems to be mounting more and more that the terrorists inside Syria have used chemical weapons. Well, they accused Assad of doing that. There's no evidence that he ever did that. There's plenty, a plethora, abundance of evidence that the rebels used chemical weapons on the Syrian people. Now, I'm not saying that, and don't take this statement as any bit of me endorsing or saying that I support Donald Trump, but I'm saying I'm listing out the hypocrisy of the whole Clinton campaign, the Clinton supporters, that these people that just mindlessly, they believe that Clinton is, they believe that if Trump is elected, everything that would happen to Clinton is going to happen to Trump. They believe that the possibility of nuclear weapons being used. I'll tell you that once Clinton is president, the potential of nuclear weapons being used is very, very high. This is somebody that's had a very, she talks about cavalier, this scary, sketchy mentality that Trump has with nuclear weapons. Well, Hillary has a very sketchy mentality when it comes to war. There's major countries. There's a little bit difference between a war with Iraq and Saddam's Iraqi military, and the difference between that and a war with the Iranian military, which that military is 15 of Saddam's militaries, and then Russia is about 150, maybe more like 500 of Saddam's militaries. And she, talks about Iran, war with Iran like an inevitability, and talks about war with Russia as a very high possibility. Trump, they tried to attach him to Vladimir Putin. They try to attach him to Vladimir Putin. But the thing is that Vladimir Putin has, and the funny thing is that Trump, in a way, has made that seem like it's more possible by the way that he's tried to attach himself in a way to Vladimir Putin. But Vladimir Putin's been made kind of clear he doesn't really want Donald Trump because he believes them both to be clowns and they're both to be puppets that won't do Russia any good. So why should he care which one of them is going to get elected? Russia's going to continue their game plan, which is do whatever it takes to stay out of a major war with the United States, but at the same time prepare for it because it seems to be getting more and more likely. Russia, and what I say is that, and what's my evidence to back the fact up that Russia does not want to get into a major war with the United States and they're doing what they can to stay out of it. If they were as hawkish as the United States media likes to present them, they would have went into Ukraine and would have stood off with the United States military in Ukraine, and the United States forces are present in Ukraine. If they were really as hawkish as the United States media presents, it would also have made a much bigger entrance into Syria, not just these limited strikes that they've done inside of Syria, which has been a very valuable thing for Syria's fight against ISIS. But I'm saying they would have run a lot more soldiers in there. They stayed completely out of Ukraine, despite that they have a very good reason to go into Ukraine, because there's a lot of lives at stake that are, people are going to be killed by this West Ukrainian regime that's killing people of Russian descent, inside of East Ukraine, and this bloody war that seems to get no coverage here in the Western media. But Russia knows that they have to show the restraint, because the worst option is going in there in many ways, because that's testing the United States. The United States might react if the Russia was to bring their forces out of Crimea and across the border into the officially Ukrainian territory, East Ukrainian territory, whatever you call it, disputed area that's now East Ukraine. I believe it's East Ukrainian. It's not part of the Kiev regime, and a lot of it's ruled separately. The only thing is it's kind of disorganized right now. But this area that Russia come in and protect, and really what would be hawkish if, Russia was to go in and go all the way into Western Ukrainian territory. That would be as if they were as hawkish as the United States media represents them to be, which they're not. They're obviously not. And also the people and their government don't want war with the United States. And also, this connection about Putin and Trump working together is mostly fabricated. The whole idea that Putin would want to work with such a wild card like Trump, somebody that's unpredictable like that. Putin is very calculated, and he doesn't really. There's not any indication really that Trump would act different than any of the other leaders. Let's look at the basics. When it comes to the most existential threat made to Russia, what is the biggest threat of all of them? The country that wants to eliminate them. The United States, and there's Israel. And the fact is that Trump is a big supporter of Israel. Israel, while they pretend to not have this extreme hatred towards Russia, has an extreme hatred towards Russia, because now they can't control them. They were trying to control them in the 90s when Boris Yeltsin was the president, and they tried to take over. They tried to infiltrate into Russia, much like how Ukraine's been infiltrated, there's definitely traces of Israel inside of Ukraine now, inside the West Ukrainian government. When it comes to that, the second biggest financer of the West Ukrainian government is Israel. Israel wanted to infiltrate Russia, but now Putin has made a stop to that, and a lot of the oligarchs that belong to the New World Order elite, he put in jail. So obviously, Israel does not like Russia on that fact. They do not like Putin, because Putin is a block to the New World Order. He's a roadblock. He's a roadblock to the New World Order, just like Assad, Ahmadinejad. The other people are that they want to eliminate. Now, also, Trump has made very clear that he's not very friendly towards Iran. And he believes that we've taken too easy an approach with Iran, which this approach that the United States has taken is pretty much pushing right to the limit of World War III with Iran. And Trump wants to go even more hawkish with Iran. Okay, so Iran is just about, it might be the second biggest ally of Russia in the Middle East. And it's the most powerful country ally of Russia in the Middle East and around the world, one of the most powerful allies Russia has. Iran, like I said, has a very powerful military that alone, the Syrian and Iranian military, if the United States was ever to face them in war, would be World War III. Without even the Russians' participation whatsoever, that'd be enough for a very massive war to take place. So, Iran, North Korea, a few other countries. Iran's one of the strongest allies Russia has. So Russia's not going to take it very well when the United States takes such a hawkish stance against one of their closest allies. Also, Trump has made clear that he doesn't like Cuba's government or Venezuela's government, which should show that he's not on the side of us listening to the show. Because he's just taking the same imperialist, the same fascist stance that the United States government has taken towards South America for many years, which is to influence it and put governments that are friendly to the United States in there, and people like Chavez and people like Morales can't stay. And they've been trying to take out these leaders for years, and they're pretty tough. Maduro, they pretty much tried to remove him in the last 2 years. They did attempted coup against him that he thwarted. They thwarted 2 coups so far inside of Venezuela. And one of the main things about the Venezuelan situation that's different than a lot of places is that they have militia members that will defend the Bolivarian Revolution to the end. They're not going to just hand over the power to the extreme right wing in Venezuela, to the far right wing inside Venezuela, the fascists inside of Venezuela, like they did in Brazil, where they just gave it to Michael Temer, and the people rose. They stood in the streets, but I guess that wasn't enough. Now these people will come with guns, and Venezuela is a very unstable situation, and the far right inside of Venezuela has killed civilians, and they are extremists. And these are the people that the United States government's funding right now. They have Leopoldo Lopez for a while as one of the big leaders of the far right inside of Venezuela. This guy got 43 Venezuelans killed, and then he got thrown in jail, and he's going to spend 13 years in jail. And there's this big cry from all the far right media in Latin America, and Univision, of course, it made a big sap story about it. But the truth is that he's a murderer. Leopoldo Lopez is a murderer, and he got what he deserved. But of course, we should look at Univision as the fact is that they're just an extension of the imperialist media machine, where they're telling Latins that they need practically to support United States invasions on their own countries. Because that's what it came down to. In fact, a lot of the people inside Venezuela they want an invasion from the United States in their country. Some of these extreme right people, which is actually not that big of a part of the population. There's a lot of the population that are naive, and they believe the kind of promises that the far right inside Venezuela have, which is that they'll make their lives even better than they are right now, and that they will eliminate some problems inside the country that are not really easy to eliminate. Those kind of problems being, for example, the economic problem. So the fact is, it goes a little bit further than it's a regional drought. Colombia suffered as well with their economy. So it's not like a switch over. The only thing different is now the sanctions would be dropped. And it proves that it's an external sabotage that's happening against the Venezuelan people. Not just the government, but the Venezuelan people. They're suffering. But not as bad as it's being claimed also on these fear porn websites. They're showing, these, like this is the end of the world happening down there in Venezuela. It's not like that. But it's definitely some hard times right now. As can be imagined, when oil, which used to sell $108 a barrel, and they used to be able to sell at $50 a barrel, so they had so many people buying theirs because it was so affordable. Now they don't have that kind of edge because it's being sold at very low rates. I don't know what it is now, maybe $30-something a barrel. At one point it was down to $27 a barrel. The Saudis were selling it below cost for the reason of economic warfare, to eliminate their competition. So Venezuela also has these sanctions where very few people can even trade with them. It's one of the most toughest hit countries by United States sanctions around the world. And it's a result of Venezuela's power, that they are a pretty powerful country that the United States wants to have. And they haven't had them in 18 years. they used to be very strong allies of Venezuela prior to Chavez. Now, just for the dictatorship, the United States had pretty good relations with Venezuela. And at that time, left wing was heavily repressed. Dissidents were killed. As in the Carazaco, I say up to 3,000 people were killed. And the Carazaco also was preceded by extreme food shortages. This is where some of the worst food shortages ever seen in Venezuelan history were seen under Andres Perez, not Maduro. Now, I'm not saying that Maduro is the perfect leader. I'm not saying that Maduro is as good as Chavez when it comes to certain aspects of the leadership that Chavez has and Maduro doesn't have. But I'm going to be fair and say that a lot of the hate towards Venezuela are fabrications. Fabrications of, and some of them complete fabrications. No truth of it at all. And it almost goes to like the North Korean propaganda. And what I mean is the stuff against North Korea's propaganda, which is, saying that the stuff about the mess problems in North Korea, or the people being executed by dogs, or was another one that was coming out of there that's something about the haircuts or whatever. These which that one, I don't know, maybe that one's true. Or there's also these other ones talking about they're eating pigeons to stay alive, or eating dogs to stay alive. They're eating dogs to stay alive. There was these stories that came out, and they were completely bogus. And that's what they're doing against Venezuela. And that's the thing, is that it's not even half truths. It's not exaggerations. It's complete bullshit that is being put out by Western media about certain countries. And the same goes to Iran, another country that has been hit very hard by propaganda, which makes sense because who influences a lot of our propaganda, a lot of the propaganda inside the United States, a lot of the media inside the United States is influenced by Israel. What is one of the countries that Israel fears the most? Iran. Of course, they're going to be critical of Iran, and they're going to make Iran seem like this very bad place. But Iran is a country that is very peaceful inside the country, and it actually, they don't have problems with terror attacks. They don't have problems with, they have some terrorists inside the country, but they've kept them under control. They don't have nearly the problems that a lot of the Middle Eastern countries have. And another thing is that they're much more inclusive than, of course, Qatar, any of the United States allies. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, they jail all kinds of their opposition. All kinds of the opposition leaders inside of Bahrain have been jailed, including their top Shia leader was jailed. So it just goes to show that in the whole United States democracy in the Middle East narrative is bullshit. And also Israel, a country that claimed to be the only democracy in the Middle East. I'm going to break that down for you, how they're not the only democracy. How they're not the only democracy in the Middle East, because they're not a democracy. They are a fascist, race-based dictatorship. And the whole system of Israel is so racist. Palestinians are not even allowed on the same buses as the Israelis. The Israelis believe themselves to be at a higher status than everybody. A government supporting Israelis at a higher status than everybody. And then a Palestinian, anti-Netanyahu Palestinian Muslim is probably at the lowest status. Well, Palestinian in general, because they treat Palestinian Christians and Palestinian Muslims equally as shitty. They have all these other people in between. For example, if you're just a Christian inside the country, maybe from the United States, and moved there, got fooled by the propaganda, you're about somewhere in the middle, but you're not being treated as good as an Israeli that was born there, or an Israeli Netanyahu supporter. If you're black inside of Israel, you're near the bottom. And even if you are Jewish, these people are sterilized. The women are sterilized. African women are sterilized in Israel. Another thing that should be noted is that they literally have a wall to keep the Palestinians out. The thing that also, which is ironic, because the same people that support the wall over there in Israel, with this rigged election have denounced Trump for wanting to build the wall on the Mexican border. It's the absolute hypocrisy. It's also the absolute craziness that exists in this whole election, and these kind of double standards and parallels between each other. Is that a lot of stuff that Trump supports here in the United States and what Israel actually does, but the same people over there in Israel have denounced Trump for suggesting it over here in the United States because they already picked their candidate. Israel wants, the elite want Hillary Clinton. They want this. This is a pre-selected candidate. There is no going back on that. There's all these people with wishful thinking. I see people saying that, and it's crazy that people think that Trump is some kind of some kind of guy that's going to stop the New World Order or whatnot. That this guy is some people have compared him to Putin. And they've really fallen for that media fabrication that Trump and Putin are friends. When Putin's from a whole different set of leaders than Trump. And much better to compare Trump, and they've even compared Trump to Hugo Chavez, which is such an insult to Hugo Chavez and his leadership. As Trump is just a landlord that got super rich, already was rich from dad's money, and just continues to live off of publicity. Didn't even believe the same stuff that he said 5 years ago. Completely flip-flop, and is ultimately just going to be doing the same things that our past presidents did. If he some way becomes president, and I don't believe there's any way that he does become president. I believe that Hillary Clinton's the selected candidate. They probably selected our Bilderberg committee this summer. She's been in the books probably to be the candidate for a long time. They probably have already been, the line succession of who will be the next corporate spokesman of America. They have their ideas. And they probably got a few now in the rotation probably for after her because, they're even though this country is a complete dictatorship, they keep to show elections to make it seem like there's any kind of democracy. It's much like what happened in Saddam's Iraq or whatever. They would have a show election, but it was ultimately a lie. It was a fake election. These are fake elections as well. And now they might not be as openly fake as some other show elections that you can think of, but this is a show election. There is no real value to it. And also they even tell you pretty much by the Electoral College that the Electoral College is the only ones that actually vote. 538 people are the only ones that cast votes, while all your votes are suggestions. Now, I'm not shitting on the process of voting altogether. I mean, if you voting for your mayor, or for a local amendment, go ahead, because you might be able to actually make a change there. But any kind of the higher positions, it's rigged. You notice that there is not a single that I can think of congressman that opposes Israel. Even the guy whose dad is Palestinian only supports a two-state solution. Which a two-state solution, how's that going to work? It's like, Israel even claims that they support a two-state solution, or they've acted like at times. They've hinted. Certain people inside of Israel, and our politicians have said, oh yeah, we support a two-state solution. There is no two-state solution. There's only a one-state solution that can work inside Palestine, which is taking away the Israel's land, which was never there. It's not their land. Giving back the Palestinian land back to them, the rightful owners of that land, the people that had their land stolen from them 70,000 years ago, or it wasn't actually 60,000 years ago, and giving it back to these people that are forced away from their land, these people that were ethnically cleansed, these people that were bombed on their own land, these people who had their houses torn down on their own land, these people that, when defended by Americans, the American got ran over by a bulldozer on their own land, herd into a small population, these big population centers on their own, so they can be bombed on their own land. People that can't even ride the same bus as the people that took over their land on their own land. People that are denied food and water on their own land. These people that have to witness their religious sites be destroyed on their own land. You know, I can just imagine what kind of reaction will happen if the Al-Aqsa Mosque is ever destroyed and they put the third temple on it. If the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's probably bound, it's bound to happen. It's going to happen. I just imagine what's going to happen when that happens. And if you see that happening, it's time to get scared. It's time to get pretty scared. Well, don't get scared, but it's time to start to do some action, because these Zionists like to use Jewish traditions, and they twist them, their own perverted ideology, their own twisted, their own scary ideology of hate and supremacy. And unfortunately, a lot of Jews around the world buy into it. You know, it doesn't really represent them. They use Jews as, they take the name Jews. They make it seem like that Israel represents all Jews, but not all Jews support Israel. But most of inside of Israel, most of the people there support those actions. And it's a very twisted society, and the people there have become twisted into becoming supporting this barbaric cult that is the Zionist ideology. And you have these rabbis spewing out this stuff that sounds like, you know, imagine if an Iranian was saying this kind of stuff. They would denounce. They would say these are terrorist clerics. And these kind of they're the kind of rhetoric that they use is like what the Saudis use for the support of Wahhabism, which Wahhabism is just is a twisting of Islamic ideals into this hate spewing ideology that kills people. And of course, the Saudis and Israelis have worked together with the destruction of a lot of the Middle East. As you've seen the Saudi regime, what they've done recently. And the fact that they, inside of Yemen, have committed these horrific crimes. These people, Yemen is not even being talked about really on our media. What the United States is supporting in the last year and 9 months or so is that they've supported the ousted government. The people rose up and told the ousted government they don't want them anymore. They overthrew them. They put the Houthis in power. These are the popular movement inside of Yemen. But now that the United States has tried to intervene and is trying to put them back into power, these people that were friendly with terrorists, and they're running part of the country out of Aden, the capital of Sana'a, and the Houthis control that. So ultimately, the government in power is the Houthis, but a lot of the territory inside of Yemen is controlled by the Hadi government. And there's a lot of it controlled by ISIS, which ultimately you can just see as one big front of Hadi and ISIS versus the Houthis, which are the government in power in Yemen. The Houthis are pro-Iran, pro-Syria, anti-New World Order. Best way to sum up the party. So, of course, they're going to try to stop them, especially when they're at the southern border with Saudi Arabia. And also, you know, it's, in a way, now Syria and Yemen being so close to Saudi Arabia puts a lot of pressure on Saudi Arabia. So with these two countries, so that's why they don't want Yemen to become part of the. They don't want Yemen to be controlled by the Houthis. And Hadi used to be. He was the dictator of Yemen for many years, and now he's trying to come back to power. And it's a very bloody, horrible civil war that's happening right now inside Yemen. It's I think it's the poorest country in the Middle East. Is also what the saddest fact about it. So it made a bad living condition even worse inside of Yemen. And they have had horrific battles, and there's a lot of countries bombing Yemen. There's this giant coalition, just like they have, the coalition bombing Syria of many different countries. They have a coalition bombing Yemen as well. And the Saudis, who have been accused of many war crimes, well, the United States still, and the coalition still supports them via what they do inside of Yemen. It's not right. It's absolutely horrible. And inside of Syria, what we have there is absolute horror show. We have hundreds of thousands dead. 282,283 have been killed inside of Syria since the start of the war. Now, and also we've had lots of innocent people that had nothing to do with the war. People that were just bystanders. These people that were just civilians. They had nothing. They're not the reason. These people weren't fighting on any side, and they definitely weren't the terrorists that were going into this country. That's what we see, is that we see mercenaries coming from other countries to take down the Assad regime. These people are killing a lot of people. These people are killing a lot of innocents. These people are Zionist-backed terrorists. They're Zionist-backed death squads that, unfortunately, a lot of left-wing people inside this country that call themselves left-wing support. And it goes. This is the dirty sect of Trotskyism. That's what it smells like. That these Trotskyists that support every resistance movement against countries that are against the United States, and they wonder why they're considered a joke. And it's not all of people that belong to that, but there's there's a very dirty sect of it. And really, it goes back to, you saw what Trotsky was accused of during the Civil War inside of Russia. So I guess the murder connected that, the murder connected here. It doesn't really seem surprising that this would happen. With Red Terror and all that was what was accused that was happening during the Civil War inside of Russia. And I'm just looking at the chat room, see what kind of what's stirring up in the chat room, see if anything to talk about. And looking, are we really talking about this clown bullshit? Yeah, the whole thing about the clown, people dressing up as clowns and they're making all kinds of appearances or whatever. Yeah, there's been this one clown. There's actually been two clowns that have been circling around the country. Pretty freaky shit. And they got a tour bus and everything. There's a lot of people that support these fucking clowns, too. They go around, they do speeches in all these different cities. Yeah, and they got some pretty scary stuff they're talking about doing once they after November 8th, and they're telling us that we should go out there and vote for them November 8th. Yeah, these presidential candidates, that's some scary fucking clowns. And these clowns, ultimately though, these clowns, they got the circus manager is ultimately keeping them in line. So we have an idea what they're going to do. But it's not a good thing what they're going to do. They're going to be doing some awful things. And once these presidential candidates are in charge, it's going to open up a new era of, I think, a more aggressive United States policy. It's going to open up a new era of, when it comes to Venezuela, Cuba, they're definitely going to be more willing to do some kind of coup. They're going to be doing some kind of they might do a third coup attempt against Maduro. And as you see, they tried to use the National Assembly against them, but ultimately anything the National Assembly rules is going to get overruled by the Supreme Court inside of Venezuela. Ultimately, it looks like there's going to be just a gridlock until 2017, and the referendum might happen, a recall referendum, like Chavez had to face. Chavez had to face a recall referendum in 2004, which he won. Now, I'm not saying Maduro would win this recall referendum, but I'm saying that Maduro has a good chance. And even if Maduro's the rules state that if a sitting president inside of Venezuela is recalled, I guess if he's recalled in the last year or second to last year of his presidential term, then the vice president becomes the president until the next election, instead of having an early election like what the right wing is trying to force an early election right now. And you guys are talking about depopulation. Well, here's some scary things to think about when it comes to depopulation. Is that all these top elite people, it's not conspiracy theory, because all these top elite people have talked about it, and they said that you have Henry Kissinger saying that the top priority for the third world should be depopulation. Now, they've already they're trying to do it with a few different ways, with the GMOs in our food to the fluoride. These are little steps. They have also, the GMOs. It's also about food control, and the fluoride is also about, it's about subduing people, subduing the population. And people believe it's bullshit. People believe that people think that the fluoride, I hear the kind of joke saying it's like, oh, they're trying to avoid the fluoridated water. But look at this: is that a lot of countries, the fluoridated water is banned. Fluoride is so corrosive that they have to put in special containers just so it won't seep through the container. The fluoride is a poison, and it's terrible. And it's literally, a lot of times they just, like industrial waste. The industrial, a lot of times they just dump the industrial waste right into a water supply. Now, people say that's other people say that's just, negligence, but it's actually, I think it's planned. There's obviously a subduing element to fluoride, and there's 23 Harvard studies showing fluoride to be harmful. You have doctors saying that fluoride causes cancer. You have all these experts saying how bad fluoride is, but yet they continue, and they had a vote. They keep having votes. I know they had a vote here in this county, or down here in St. Pete. They had a vote whether to take the water out of the fluoride. And I think they actually, the fluoride out of the water. I think they voted yes here to take the fluoride out of the water, but then it got put back in. So now we got fluoride again, I think, in our water. And sodium fluoride is, I think, a specific type of fluoride that they put in water. Still, the point is that it's something that's not supposed to be in our water, and it's put in there. And it goes to show, people don't even think twice about what they're consuming, what they're putting in their bodies, and why they put this stuff in there. It's like, I also think, like, the fact, like, cigarettes, I'll talk about it right here, is that they put all these chemicals in there, partially to make it addictive, but I think it might be a way to soft kill everybody, or kill, because a lot of people do smoke. 25% of all the older generation smoke. Everybody's about over 30, I think 25%. And then it's like 8% for like the newest, people that just turned 18 recently. It's down to like 8% for that generation, because they now know how bad smoking is. But for some, for many generations, it stayed about the same. And in other places, I think in different ethnic groups, it's higher. For example, if you probably went to, like, if you looked at, if you looked at predominantly black areas, I think it might be higher. And in other countries, if they're smoking American cigarettes, they're also, taking in all those chemicals. In some countries, it's very high. 40% of the women, 80% of the men in a lot of these Asian countries. So people wonder why they put this. It's 7,000 chemicals they put in these cigarettes a lot of times. And why they don't have to. If tobacco was just to be smoked, as it comes out of the ground and rolled up, it would not be nearly as bad as the thing that it comes in the cigarette pack. Because the point is that I think it could definitely goes along with the idea of the soft kill, because they don't need to put all that shit in there, I don't think, just to make it more addictive. It's to kill people. And also, why is there also all these the GMOs in our food? It's partially because of food control, but it's also another way of shortening lifespans. And they proved how bad these GMOs are. And people call you crazy. People say that you're anti-science because you're not looking at the science of how GMOs are not harmful for you. But the science shows that GMOs are harmful for you. In fact, they show in lab rats, which are one of the most reliable things when it comes to testing things, because they have a very similar anatomy as humans. Lab rats get these gigantic tumors when they consume GMO food, and it doesn't even have to be after that long. Lab rats can cause cancer, and that's what oftentimes, like, for example, they've tested other stuff, and they've said that it causes, they'll say, oh, it was tested in lab rats and it caused cancer, so it's bad for you. Also, mercury. Right now, a lot of the fish that you eat is going to have mercury levels. Whether that's, and that's allowed. It's definitely, at least negligence is being caused by the FDA. That a lot of these fish with mercury, a lot of them in the Gulf of Mexico have a lot of mercury in them. And there's a few different reasons because, of why these fish are so contaminated. For example, after the BP oil spill happened, there was a lot of things that happened afterwards that made our Gulf in even worse shape. And this is to the people who are local. And I know one person here in the chat room is also from the Gulf. So, think about that when you're fishing. The fact is that all that shit is at least slightly contaminated. And there's a lot of mercury out there, which is one of the most poisonous things as a human we can consume, is mercury. Mercury is very bad. And then lead, I hear people, lead hasn't been used in a while. And for paint, it used to be used in paint. It causes like brain damage, apparently. I don't know about, somebody said that causes people to act more violent. Now, that would be interesting if that they have people, puts us in that causes people to act more violent right before a big war. I don't know why people are bringing up Melissa Harris Perry in the chat room. MSNBC is, this is an example of like that, people that call themselves activists for minorities or activists for humanity, and they don't like war, and they believe pot should be legalized. But then they'll support this war in Syria, and people that watch this MSNBC. And now MSNBC has lost so much of their viewership because of what they turned into. There used to be some decent hosts. I'm not going to say they were a decent network, because ultimately their network hasn't changed ownership, but there were some hosts that they got rid of because they didn't go along with their Dylan Ratigan, Jesse Ventura back then. But now we have, these absolutely terrible political hacks, these are talking heads. They're just saying the narrative that they want you to believe about whatever. And in Syria, which one of the big pushers of this hate towards Syria, one of the big pushers towards this has been Rachel Maddow, which Rachel Maddow also is one of the people that pushes the hate towards conspiracy theorists, or as we call it, truthers. And the whole term conspiracy theorist is a derogatory term, because what it means, it was something that was utilized with the whole Watergate Commission, or was used towards the people that were addressing Watergate, and the Nixon kind of coined the term. So, the comments that come up in the chat room sometimes, I don't really feel good repeating them, but they do provide some good entertainment for me. And what John Teeter just said is that MSNBC are a bunch of trendy leftists. What they are is that they're fake leftists. They are what the establishment calls the left, but ultimately still belong to the same fascist paradigm of the Democrats and the Republicans. Ultimately, they still support the same corporate fascist policies and the same kind of imperialist policies on the rest of the world, and shooting bombs on all the countries that don't agree with the United States. MSNBC and all their supporters are they're those people that are against war and they're for legalizing pot. But once a Democrat says that we need a war, they're going to support war, and that's really these people. A lot of MSNBC's viewers, I'm guessing, they're still left, are really just people that are still brainwashed into the idea that the Democrats are going to provide them any kind of real change. And it's like the same people who still watch Fox are the same people that believe Republicans are going to bring any kind of change. And CNN, just all the people in the middle. But it's all from the same paradigm. The big three news networks are all corporate media and bullshit. And you notice that they're really trying hard to get viewers in because they're losing the viewers. They've tried to make themselves seem a little bit more entertaining. They've kind of tried to change themselves in how they present themselves. That they're not these stuffy news readers, but that they're just normal people talking about politics. But the truth is that they are talking heads paid a lot of money by the establishment to put lies to you. And it's true that they're only anti-war, a lot of these people that are watching MSNBC, when there's a Republican in office. So when Bush was in office, they were anti-war. But then when Obama came into office, all of a sudden it was no longer cool to protest war. Even though that Bush was involved with 4 wars, Obama's been involved with 7 wars. Now, they're still equally pieces of shit, both supported by the elite, puppets of the elite. They're puppets of the elite and people that go along with the plan of the elite's New World Order. And, these kind of people, like that support Rachel Maddow and all this still MSNBC hosts, whoever these people still are these people are delusional and are very brainwashed. These people are these trendy activists. They're not even activists. I'm not going to call them activists. They just act like on Facebook that they care about these issues. They'll post a meme here and there about how they're against war and how and the ones is that also these people that say stuff like, I don't know, I respect all peoples and all cultures or whatever. These people that make a point that they do that. These people don't really stand by these minorities. These people don't really actually care about these different people. For example, if they actually gave a shit about the Kurdish people inside of Syria, they would not be supporting these terrorists that are killing them. The United States has been aiding the people that have been killing the Kurdish while pretending to support them over here on our media. And I see this as that they've tried to associate themselves, and they try to associate themselves with the Iraqi military and the Kurdish who don't like them. Those two, the Iraqi military has made it very clear that the United States has been fucking them over and that they're going to Iran, which is unprecedented because Iran and Iraq had a very ugly war that the United States supported. Remember, the United States supported an invasion by Iraq into Iran, and they have been able to oversee that because now, guess what? Now they have a common enemy, which is the United States and ISIS. And Iraq, and ultimately, Saddam, being the United States puppet, caused that war. And now that he's no longer present, and now they have a government, I guess it's more reasonable because they were reasonable enough to back away from the United States, and now they've had a lot more success in their anti-terror effort inside of Iraq. And Mosul's about to be free, and without a lot of United States support. In fact, there was no United States support towards the liberation of Mosul. While this has became a topic in our debates and a topic inside of our topics inside of our political, inside of our election, it's inside of our election discussions. Mosul, there's not very much United States involvement with it when it comes to the liberation of Mosul, but there's a lot of United States involvement to how it was captured by ISIS. ISIS is obviously being funded in Syria, as they're the biggest opposition group inside of Syria against Bashar al-Assad. ISIS controls huge amounts of the territory inside of Syria, and mainly eastern Syria, where the United States coincidentally been striking. But you know what the United States will probably say is like, we haven't been too good striking over there. And it's like, but we're going to coordinate our strikes better, and we're going to do more things necessary to defeat them. But in reality, it's because they're fighting the Syrian military, and they're fighting the Syrian military's efforts to free themselves from ISIS, because they want the terrorists inside of Syria to defeat Assad, because they want Syria to fall just like Libya fell and Gaddafi fell. It's a very similar situation. The attempt to remove Gaddafi and the attempt to remove Assad. And that's also there's also the flip side of the Fox support, people that watch Fox News, and the people that right now are talking about how they love small government and how they think the government should get out of their lives. But just a few years ago, they were for giant government, and these people were for also for war. Now these guys are pretending like they're against war. They're saying now that they think we should have. They're acting like some of them. They're acting like it was like they were against the Iraq War when it started. That we shouldn't have been in. Now they're admitting that we should have never been in Iraq, because now that it's when the Democrats are there, they start. All of a sudden, they're anti-war and anti-big government. And if Trump was to become president, they're probably going to be all of a sudden pro-war, big government again, pro-big government again. And then I wonder what's going to happen to libertarians after after this election, because they've had this guy that's an Israeli supporter and supports big government, even though he claims to be for small government. What he said contradicted that. This guy acted like a doofus during the election, and a guy who also seemed to and I'm saying his actions of how he acted, and when it comes to Hillary, his soft talk with Hillary, what the Libertarian Party is going to look like after the election. And I find it kind of weird how this has changed from 2012. Gary Johnson seemed to be some kind of almost like a genius, and it seemed to be proposing solutions that would really help America. But 2016, he seems to be just some guy that they can blame in the end. They'll say, the reason why Trump didn't win is because Gary Johnson took votes away from him. Just like when Bush won in 2000, they said, Gore didn't win because Nader took away votes from him. So to make it really, what it does is that it takes away the idea of the rigged election and just goes to, you guys caused this to happen. You guys voting this way caused this guy to get elected in, even though that he only had 40-something% of the vote. This time, it looks like somebody in the low 40s, high 30s, low 40s, maybe mid 40s could win the election. Because they're going to say Gary Johnson took, a decent percentage for himself. They'll say that Gary Johnson got 9% or whatever. So, and the guys saying, there's not Republicans for, but I haven't seen of them too much wanting to disarm the populace. That's what their public rhetoric is. But you look at their, you look what a lot of these people support in bills and stuff like that. Remember, Reagan was actually one of the toughest when it comes to guns. He put one of the strictest gun measures that we've seen in recent years. And you don't hear too much of, a lot of the people that love to, these conservatives that right now are calling for small government and are anti-war, who will flip right overnight if Trump's president. They talk about how Reagan was so pro-gun or whatnot. Reagan was not pro-gun. He was pretty anti-gun. Same thing with people like Mitt Romney and these other Republicans. Now, I don't know about Trump, but Trump used to be anti-assault weapons. And now he's acting like he's pro-assault weapons. There's quite a few, a handful of exceptions. Now, I don't know, it might be just to make it look like there's some kind of debate in this country about guns. I mean, why they have these people constantly talking in favor of guns, these politicians. I don't know if they actually do support guns like they pretend they do. And there's also a lot of, stuff that happens away from the public spotlight, like bills that are signed and stuff that they'll approve of, but, don't really get a lot of public spotlight. There's also a lot of, what it does is that people say in the end, there was a debate about it, but you guys lost, so we're going to be taking away guns now, is what could happen. I don't know. And also the most common line, when it comes to this election come up, is that you're probably going to hear this from somebody. It's like, well, you're not voting for one of these two, this is a wasted vote. It's a wasted vote? Is that voting for people that you know what they're going to do. They're going to do exactly what the last few presidents have done, and they're just going to continue the elite's agendas and the agenda of the military-industrial complex to bomb the shit out of everyone that doesn't agree with the United States. So that's a wasted vote. And, again, like I said, is that you... sorry, guys. Lost the audio there for a little bit. We're going to continue on with the show right now and talk about the Syrians that have been killed by the United States. And these people in the army that were killed by the United States, 106 of them were killed. Imagine if this was happening to the United States military in Iran or whatnot. The kind of reaction that would be here in the United States. And the fact is that the Syrians and the Russians have pretty much completely stayed away from this. And, the Russians could have intervened right there, and they could have said, this is the final straw, we're intervening, and we're going to send 35,000 troops. They didn't, and it shows that the restraint that the Russians have is that it's going to take a lot for them to get involved in any kind of war that could face a direct confrontation with the United States. Of course, when they have the memory of World War II still kind of fresh in their heads, because a lot of people that were in World War II, may didn't fight, but a lot of people that were involved with it are still alive in Russia, and they still know the story is still remembered vividly, and they still push that and try to have people remember how horrible that was. Because unlike here, where they try to make war seem like it's not as bad as it is, they talk about the harsh realities of war and what kind of stuff happened in World War II, when Russia was faced with the absolute worst kinds of war that the Nazis employed against them, and what the Russian people had to go through during the siege of Leningrad, and what happened at Stalingrad, which was an unfortunate name of a city where that happened. Stalingrad. It was a town named after a dictator, where people were trying to push back an army led by a dictator. The Nazis' invasion of the Soviet Union is probably partially why the Russians have been so cautious about war when it comes to the people. They're definitely not hawks like a lot of the American people that have no idea what some of these harsh realities of war are, because it doesn't happen in the United States. We haven't been bombed. We haven't been invaded since 1812. That was the last time that there was a full-scale invasion inside the United States, and there has been no real threats to the United States of any kind of military entrance since World War II. And they try to make war seem less severe than it actually is. With the video games and with the with also the propaganda commercials. Make it seem like that war is such a noble, honorable thing, but ultimately it's just it's a sad reality that we come to that at some point. Which war is a necessary thing at some point. When it comes to the liberation of a country and towards pushing back evil, like what the Iranians did when the Iraqi military invaded their country in the 80s, which is a war that seems to a lot of people don't even know that it happened. It was one of the worst wars that we've had in recent history. Over 1 million people died in that war, and it's also a war that really kind of shaped a lot of things that happened. A lot of the relationships inside the Middle East. It's kind of important to understand that, and it really makes this whole recent cooperation between Iraq and Iran seem pretty remarkable when you look back at what happened before, and that they were able to move past that, and that this new stage is happening, which is this cooperation between former enemies now turned into somewhat of allies. Which, there are allies. The Iranians and the Iraqis. And the hatred between the people never really exists as much as made the previous hatred between the government. And when it was Saddam, and back then it was still Khamenei's, back when Ayatollah Khamenei controlled the country. Now the president is Hassan Rouhani, and the supreme leader is Ayatollah Khamenei. And Ahmadinejad might be making his way back to Iran next year. The elections happen next year inside of Iran, and Rouhani's kind of taken a more moderate approach towards the West and have kind of tried to stay peaceful with the West. But Ahmadinejad took a much more stronger stance when it came to Iran's stance with the West, which is the stance that Iran has taken now. The fact is that they signed the Iran nuke deal, which the Iran nuke deal ultimately it just puts where the United States can enter at any time and start snooping around in the country. It's actually a very bad bill that they signed on their part, and they were posted. The sanctions were dropped on them. The sanctions the United States had violated that part of the nuke deal very early. They violated that part of the nuke deal, and you keep hearing these spear ads about that. Whatever congressman or senator supported the Iran nuke deal, this is going to give the Ayatollah nuclear weapons. Actually, no. That is true that this is a very severe bill against Iran. What the Iran nuke deal is going to put Iran into a false sense of security, into believing that they're nearing peace with the United States, but in reality, the United States is planning their entrance to a war with them, and the United States government is planning the entrance into Syria, which the entrance into Syria is the entrance into Iran. It's interconnected, those two countries, and their alliances with each other. Is that Iran and Syria are not two countries that will be, they're not going to turn their back on each other. And I'm just going back to the chat room. Hopefully it doesn't disconnect. You guys are entertained over there in the chat room. See what you guys are talking about. Let's see. Got a while left in the show. Sucks we don't have the call line set up. That's why I say participate via the chat room. That's the best way to get some of your input into the show. And, oh, there we go. I got to talk about Wolf Blitzer. Wolf Blitzer, every time you tune into a show, he always acts like he's got some serious news. And it's like, and we're back here in the Situation Room. And, the Situation Room, there'll be some lame topic he's talking about, whatnot, and it's another talking head. Don Lemon, Wolf Blitzer, Anderson Cooper, they're all from the same bullshit. And Chris Cuomo, isn't that another guy? That's another talking head. It's bad that I know all the names of these talking heads. It's like Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly. What's a few other ones I can think of? Like Megyn Kelly, Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes, and even Lawrence O'Donnell. See all these talking heads they got, and they make it seem like it's all this variety, but ultimately, it's the same bullshit. It's the mainstream media. I'm looking right now. Oh my God, this whole running gag is going on with the Trump said pussy thing. Yeah, that's the Situation Room. It'd be like, and we're back to the Situation Room. New recorded audio shows that Trump said pussy 11 years ago in this tape, or no. They'll have it's like we actually have two new tapes of Trump saying pussy right here, and it's like we're not really sure on the validity of this one. It's like he goes through it. It's like, oh wow, that's a nice pussy you have right there. And it's like, oh wait, that was from a cat show in New York from 11 years ago. Sorry, I got to throw that one out. And Chris Cuomo is that's the governor of New York, right? Yeah, he's the one that they're saying that only these guys can see the declassified documents because apparently we're not responsible enough for something to see the WikiLeaks documents. Which WikiLeaks, it's funny also the opinion change that's happened with WikiLeaks. Remember, a few years ago, a lot of these same people that, like I said, the conservative justice warriors, they were saying how WikiLeaks is a terrorist organization that is against the war, and that's why they're against them, and that Assange should be captured. Now these same people are saying that, they're a great organization, and they're exposing the realities of corrupt Hillary, and they're against the war, so I support them. See, they completely changed the they completely change their narrative just because of the different. They fall into the paradigm. You know, again, Andrew Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, whatever. They all belong to the same shit. Chris Cuomo is the brother of the current governor of New York and the son of Chris Cuomo. Whatever. Anybody that's saying about the WikiLeaks documents and talking shit about the WikiLeaks documents, WikiLeaks is very reliable, and our media is trying to make it seem like they're not reliable, but of course not. They're of course not. They're going to support. They're not going to support the WikiLeaks documents because this is pretty much said that everything the media has been saying for years are lies. So. Everything that the media has been saying for years, WikiLeaks completely contradicts. And the WikiLeaks has shown that the ideas that the United States wants to jump into Syria for humanitarian reasons is false, because it says that in 2006 is actually when the United States started planning the invasion of Syria and started planning the idea of taking out Assad. And well, people might argue that there was accusations of human rights abuses back then, but it wasn't the Syrian civil war and the rebels and all that. That wasn't existing yet. In fact, it wasn't until 2011 is when the civil war broke out. And it was pretty much a spontaneous breakout of the civil war. February 2011, go back to January 2011, the rebels don't exist. February 2011, the rebels don't exist. And you go to March 2011, and all of a sudden the rebels do exist. And all of a sudden, within a few months, all kinds of terror attacks, major battles, and all hell breaks loose. And also, you have already the United States government talked about how Assad needs to step down, and Gaddafi goes down that same year with the spontaneous breakout of the civil war in his country. And we also had the Arab Spring breakout in Egypt, where they replaced one United States-supported dictator with another United States-supported dictator. The Arab Spring as a whole was a CIA operation. It was an operation in order to put in leaders that will support the United States. And there were smaller protests in other Middle Eastern countries, but you didn't hear much about it. In Bahrain, there was giant protests, and you didn't hear much about it because they, for example, even one reporter said they pay CNN for them not to say stuff about their government. Bahrain is a very corrupt regime, and all you hear about them too much here in the West is that they have this big race every year. And that Bahrain is actually a country that oppresses their Shia population, has arrested their biggest opposition leader inside the country. Qatar is also another government like that, like Bahrain. United Arab Emirates as well. All that flashy exterior and all the fast cars and big hotels and all these projects that they did and all these rich lifestyles that they live is kind of a cover for the fact of a very oppressive regime that controls the United Arab Emirates and a few monarchs that are the ones in charge of the monarchy that controls the United Arab Emirates. And the United Arab Emirates also has blood on their hands in Syria. And Dubai, all these people talk about how nice Dubai is and how great of a travel spot it is, and that's their big cover. Dubai is the big cover. It's like how Iraq used to be back in the days. That Iraq used to be this place that a lot of people like to travel to in the early years of Saddam. Remember, even Saddam got the key to Detroit back when the United States still liked them. Before the '91 war and all that, before the Gulf War, Saddam was the United States ally. The United States even gave Saddam the green light to gas the Kurds, which happened in 1987, by the way. The United States, there's a lot of examples like that of absolutely horrible dictators that the United States supported, and it's a pattern. It's not just isolated incidents. There was Marcos, there was Saddam, there was Suharto, there was Pinochet, there was Batista, there was Andres Perez, there was Franco, there was Salazar, there was Seiko, there was Mubarak, there was I'm trying to think of another one before, and there's a lot more. I just can't. Of course, there's Stroessner. There is Noriega. Remember, the United States supported Noriega for a while, and intermission. I'm not even. When am I going on intermission? Looking at the chat room, saying the intermission. I'm sponsored by somebody. Talk about that company. A little interesting fact about Zim is that the fact that Zim, who is partially owned by the Rothschilds, I think they're 30% owned by the Rothschilds, and they just happened to, a week before the 9/11 attacks, they happened to move their offices from the Twin Towers to somewhere else. So just a little interesting fact. Also, another thing to think about is that jet fuel can't melt helium. Just putting that out there. And the fact that the buildings practically fell into their own footprint. And there was a lot more examples like that on the 9/11 of all these coincidences that just happen to happen around that. It's like after 15 years of people, the people being able to research about what really happened on 9/11 and what happened to those people, how were these people killed? That this wasn't an attack, it was a controlled demolition. This was an attack from our own government. This is an inside job. This is a false flag. An inside job in order to support. They got people to support a war in Iraq and Afghanistan. They supported the whole war on terror narrative, and also got a lot of people supported. People started supporting a lockdown in our own country, and we've lost a lot of our rights. And people have just handed them over to the government. They rolled over, is what happened when they said they would keep us safe. And people traded safety for liberty, just like what Ben Franklin warned us that you will end up with neither. And these people, 3,000 Americans died because of that. And that's the sad thing that happens a lot of times with these false flags, is that I think I lost the audio here. Sad thing that happens with these false flags is that real people die, and what kind of narratives are supported from that. And apparently, I'm still alive. It says I'm still airing the show. 24 hours of nonstop share music blasted into my cell. That sounds terrible. Yeah, imagine the kind of lineup though is that of what they would what they would play. They could just look at my Facebook and they could tell what kind of music I don't like, probably, because it's like look at all that classic rock and stuff like that. They probably play some like 2 Chainz and shit like that. They'll play like oh shit, imagine that. Imagine one of those new recent, like what's some of these groups? Or Tyga or whatever the hell. The one that is now with one of the Kardashian sisters. 24/7 Amy Schumer podcast. Yikes. That'd be rough. Going back to the main topic of what I was talking about, also that after 15 years, people have had 15 years. I wonder if there's really much we can even. I mean, we can just keep fighting, trying to get more people understand the truth about 9/11. We had, I think like 15% of the population knows the truth about 9/11. Believe it was an inside job. They know that this is mass murder by our government, and the Zionists, and the United States government were that use this to kill more people in Iraq, use this to lock down our own country. And you know, all these, and going just looking at the chat room. I don't know, I'm just reading what's going on here. It says that people have said a lot about what's going to happen now with these new Hillary leaks. It's also, people say that what's going to happen to Comey or Anthony Weiner. This seems like a freaking Simpsons episode, you know? That the fact that Anthony Weiner is the big part of it, a big scandal towards the end of the election. I mean, and what happens to Anthony Weiner is this guy that, you know, likes to send his dick pics to his interns or whatnot. He gets caught doing it. Yeah, that's the thing. It's not that uncommon for a guy to for a boss to do this, also, you know, send dick pics or something to an intern or whatnot, and it's not right. But but you know, the thing is that they make this huge deal about it, and you know, just keep people distracted. Remember that whole Anthony Weiner thing was a big deal when it happened, and you know, because Americans love a good sex scandal. Americans love this kind of soap opera drama that happens in our politics. So if they can keep Americans distracted with that kind of stuff, they won't look into Syria, they won't look into 9/11, they won't look into what's really going on. The media, you see the kind of stories that have came up, and you see these terrible fluff stories. They put out the stuff that is completely distraction and has no real applications to our lives. You know, like when they had the transgender bathroom thing. That was a thing that went on for a long time. And while that was going on, you had Syria heating up. You had also TPP was a major thing that was happening. Remember, the TPP was the big corporation bill. It pretty much gives corporations all the power, and it's still going on. And I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm still on air. Can somebody give me some kind of a heads up if I'm still airing? Because somebody told me I wasn't airing, but I'm still got the UTY radio thing. It says I'm still online. Been here 24 minutes, and I see what he did there. They talk about a black site. He says where I got sent to. Yeah. That's something right there. Now, you know what? Talk about BET. Isn't BET owned by some white dude? That BET. Well, what it does is pretty much just corrupts the minds of black youth. It's like what the Boondocks show is. What BET is, that they just put out the most random crap in there, and they just keep dumbing down people, and they want to dumb down the black youth. And it's like with the rap music, what it's done to the communities, tearing apart their what it's done to the communities inside the country. Now the Boondocks. Remember they had the one episode where the Uncle Ruckus reality show, and that's something that the media would do, right? Is that the media would play some guy? They would put some guy like that. Like it's almost like that one sheriff from Milwaukee or whatever, the black guy that almost talks. He almost seems to not like black people himself. But it's like what Uncle Ruckus is, but way more extreme Uncle Ruckus. And they would do that, and they would say it's something to tear apart the unity of racial in this country. it just causes more divide and more tension inside the country by highlighting the ridiculousness of a character like Uncle Ruckus. But these people actually do exist, apparently. Like, these Uncle Ruckuses. Uncle Ruckus, though, I mean, it makes that show. It was so funny. I mean, just seeing what kind of stuff he's talking. The stuff he would say on that show, and then the Huey Freeman, of course, would be my favorite. My favorite. My favorite character off that, because he says a lot of stuff I would say, and Huey Freeman spit out a lot of truth. That show is great, and anybody who hasn't gave it a chance yet definitely should check it out. There's a reason why it only went 4 seasons. I mean, this is a great show. So much comedy, and really people love this show, and good info. It's like there's not too many people that have watched this show and don't like it. And the Boondocks only made it 4 seasons. There's some talks that they might bring it back for a 5th season. When other shows, for example, the Kardashians going for like 11 seasons or whatever, how terrible that is. And that is a very interesting Hillary logo right there. And the chat room's getting pretty busy right now. There's a lot of people participating in the chat room. It's pretty cool. So if you haven't participated in the chat room, definitely give it a chance one night. People. It's great knowing that there's some people that will listen to this radio show instead of watching Sunday Night Football or whatever that goes on TV on Sunday nights. There's really not that much on TV on Sunday nights, but the people listen to this show and listen to the and hear some truth about politics, and get an interesting conversation going about about what's going on in this country. And the enthusiasm that Otto's showing, it's definitely his enthusiasm needs some work right there. Gone kind of weak. Can't really do much of that enthusiasm, just kind of just hanging there. All new visitors going into the chat room. You gotta bring the dank. Bring the green. Pass it around with all the people, all these chat writers, and you see also the celebrities are being used as an extension of the political. Of these political figures, and they use these celebrities to get the people. You see some very unfortunate situations, like you see, for example, what was one? Oh, it's like celebrities I tend to like who don't really they're not for these politicians. In fact, they've spoken out. For example, Charlie Sheen. At least he was talking about 9/11, talk about how it was an inside job. Hillary. So what was one I saw about Hillary was Hillary hanging out with Miley Cyrus after talk about the objectification of women or whatnot. Miley Cyrus is her being a role model for women or whatnot. She looks like you see some of her what she does in some of her concerts is complete trash, and that's the thing, is that's again one of the other double standards of Hillary. And also an interesting thing about Hugo Boss, talk about their Korean Armani suit. Hugo Boss supported they made the uniforms for the Nazis. Swords being dangerous. We got to do some sword control. Can't let everybody get started. That's what's happened inside of the UK is that after gun control, now they're talking about knife control. In fact, you have to be 18 to buy a freaking knife inside of the UK. You can't get a gun, and they have the most violent crime of any place inside of Europe. They have a huge problem with stabbing, and you have a huge problem inside of the UK with crime. And you have all these the huge amount of the violence they have in the UK would be avoided by people having guns. When people have guns, interestingly enough, people don't mess with people who have guns. In Sweden, where people have 1 in 2 people have guns, they have the least violent crime in all of Europe. The statistics show that when people are armed, the crime doesn't happen. And also, what's another thing that doesn't happen when the people are armed? Mass genocide. What happens when people get disarmed? Genocide. So, like what happened in Guatemala, they got disarmed, and then they killed 200,000 of their natives. You have what happened inside of Mount China. They got disarmed, and then they had 45 million plus of their people get killed. 45 million Chinese were killed. And gun control, you see what they're trying to bring here to the United States. Never give up your guns. The guns are, they're freedom dispensers, as somebody I know in the chat room would say. They're absolutely vital to retain your liberties. And these little whatever, they're 7 pounds or whatnot. Those few pounds of difference between you being possibly being dragged to camp or you being able to put up a fight. And what I mean by camp, you're definitely not. It won't be summer camp. It's going to FEMA camp, and FEMA camps are not a fabrication. They're totally true. FEMA camps are they built 800 of them across this country, and they're going to house dissidents, people that talk like us, and it'll probably be some kind of re-education or some kind of work thing. They'll probably put people to work or something like that for long, terrible hours. Practically like some sort of slavery that they'll have inside of these FEMA camps. All we know is that they're going to be absolutely terrible. And it's going to be like some of the previous examples of people being rounded up into prison camps. Spring of 2017, the Great Leap Forward happened here. I hope not. That's where a lot of people died in the 60s instead of Mount China. In fact, inside of Mount China, what they did is that they took away all the food from the people that farmed it, and they gave it to the industrial workers so they would have food, so they can keep out pumping out stuff. So, that might happen here, something like that. Is that they'll just take away? There will be very little access to food for a lot of people, and they'll just be given to the people that are producing our. I don't know. They're producing whatever. And I don't think that, people talk about the possibility of a civil war happening here. I don't think it's going to happen. Because, honestly, that's a little bit of wishful thinking, the idea of that the Americans will rise up in big numbers and that there'll be the militias will come out and they'll fight when the martial law is declared. I don't know. Honestly, I really would like to believe that a revolution will happen and that the government gets thrown out of power. But like I said, the numbers are going to have to be high and a lot higher than they are right now. What kind of number is willing to actually do that right now? Maybe 3%. They say that 3% is enough, but I don't know about that when you have the sophisticated United States military that they have now. And even if I don't think of 3%, more like 1% maybe, are actually willing to go out there with guns and fight for their lives against the government. I don't know about that. I think that everybody should just look at the situation and assess it themselves, rather before doing anything. And getting out of the country, maybe that's what the best thing to do, especially if you got a family. Save you and your family. Save get out of the country. There's many different options to do. I hope that people stay back and fight. That's the best option, to go stay here and fight the government. And it's already, wow, we're blowing through the show. But the best thing that we can do right now is spread the information. Which is to the information about how corrupt our government is, and the information about what kind of system and who really runs the system. Mentions of the Rothschilds. But a lot of people don't even know who the Rothschilds are, and that's an important thing that we need to tell people about this banking family that's been taking over banks all around the world and controls central banks in many different countries, and controls our Federal Reserve, which it's not really ours, it's theirs, and they levy the bill for printing the money to the United States government. The United States government levies the bill to us via the IRS. And via the United States, they tax us. Chelsea Clinton. God, why are you putting pictures up of Chelsea Clinton up in the chat room? God, it's like you definitely see that. That's Hillary's daughter right there for sure. And she's got the resemblance. God, so you think that? I guess there's no way to hide that. You think that somebody that rich, and there's this talk that one day she'll be running for president. Chelsea will be running in the somewhere next 20 to 30 years or whatnot. I don't know if this country's even still here at that point. And they're still having an election. I'm figuring the elections are going to stay even through martial law, and a big war martial law will keep the elections just to keep people satisfied. Because once the elections go, people will start to be worried. But the elections, of course, are going to be just show elections. And yeah, I'm not saying that that this country will be even still here in 30 years, and we'll still be in the same situation. I understand that, but things are going to move a lot faster than that. Who knows what this country will be like in 30 years after all this stuff goes down. I just can't imagine how this country is going to be like in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Once we get deep into the Hillary Clinton administration, what kind of draconian measures they're going to justify. There were some the draconian measures that they told us after 2001 in the Patriot Act, that they seemed pretty draconian at the time. The ideas that of the invading our privacy and limiting free speech. That's pretty much what's happened. Because you question the Iraq War, all of a sudden became politically incorrect and are questioning some of the most horrible parts of the Iraq War. There's also this part of the internet. There's just not just the social justice warriors, but there's also the conservative justice warriors. The social justice warriors and alt-right both have limits on what you can say and what you can do. It's ridiculous. The social justice warriors believe that if any kind of flirting or attempting to have sex with a woman or something like that is a sexual assault. And then the alt-right will tell you that if you sleep with anybody outside your race, you're a race traitor and you are contributing to the dilution of humanity or something like that. And also, yeah, United Nations, they come here with their pretty uniforms or whatnot. They better expect, because I know there's a lot of Americans that are definitely. I think there's a lot of people think that the United Nations is going to be necessarily the ones that do it, and it's going to be a little bit of mix of a lot of law enforcement. There's going to be just the UN. There's going to be the UN, the Russian government, or not Russian. I'm talking. The United States government. There's going to be the all your sheriffs, your state troopers, your local police, or whatnot. I almost said Russian government because I guess I was talking about them earlier, but no, Russian government's definitely not going to be here to come take your guns. That's going to be the United States government doing that. The Russian government might come to the United States. They'll be when they invade and the big war happens or whatnot. When they decide it's time, because at one point they're going to have to deal with Israel and the United States. It's just when will be the best time. The chance of war is there is no real path that leads to us not getting into some kind of war with Russia, with this government in charge. That's their plan. That they're in the way of their plans, so they're going to try to eliminate them. And I don't know I guess there's these future predictions that go on in the chat room and whatnot, that the Second American Civil War will be won by Russia nuking I don't think Russia's going to nuke any major cities. What are you talking about? I think that unless the only way that Russia is using nukes is if they're nuked first, and also I don't think that Russia is going to be. Honestly, that's one thing that I would go a little bit different than a lot of people on, is the prediction of use of nuclear weapons. I don't really see nuclear weapons being used in these future wars. I see a lot of other different kinds of weapons, because the nuclear weapon is kind of an outdated weapon in the first place, when you think about it. Is that they have all these other things that are very destructive. But I think they're going to avoid that because of the whole idea that literally the entire world could blow up. They'll do it in many other ways. And it's the unfortunate reality. They'll carpet bomb into cities. A lot of the old-fashioned stuff, and new bombs being used. And actually, I mean, I know there's like a little bit of a timeline going on, like a little bit of John Teeter has made some predictions a little bit here in the chat room about what's going to happen in the future. And I don't really get too much in the business of speculating timelines and whatnot. I can make some predictions and see, like I said, is that I think sometime late next year, a lot of shit's going to start going down. As in the Syria breaking out and a martial law being declared, and about 1 year into the Hillary Clinton's administration, that makes some sense there. That they'll be that's when she'll decide to start doing some very scary stuff, and stuff that at that point she'll have convinced the people that we need it, and that this is necessary, and that this is and that if we don't do that, the boogeyman's going to get us. Which that's the same thing that they pushed after 9/11, is that if we don't do this, the terrorists are going to get us again. And that's what they'll say. They're going to say that the terrorists did get us again, or they're going to say that Iran got us. There's going to be done via false flag. That's what I think. That's what all those things point to. So they keep doing these false flags all the time, and they have done them smaller scales, but you've seen some of the bigger ones, and they seem to be building up. they had the one here in Florida, a pretty big one, the Pulse nightclub shooting, and then they had the another big one that happened recently, which was the Paris attack, which had over 100 people die. And you even had people say that were in the band saying that they believed the security was in on it. And you didn't hear too much about that. Well, we don't got too much more time left in the show, but Syria, after those 106 were killed, you know what happened is that this is a very interesting turn of events. Is the Syrian government said is that they have proof that ISIS and the United States communicated with each other, and that the United States coordinated with ISIS ahead of the attacks, even though that they call this to be an accident, and that they thought they were ISIS, and that's why they ended up striking them. So that would completely disprove the United States story, and it would prove that the United States is working with ISIS. Even though pretty much everyone knows that now, it would put this definitive proof, and that they're going to release this stuff, the details of this soon, sometime later. Which I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they'll release like this week or something like that, and they just see what that does for the election or whatnot, or see what it does for the support in the election. See what it does for the support in the election, or they made, also this Russia's government has said this is made it conclusive that the United States supports ISIS. So now that the Russian government is saying this, it's pretty serious. And Days Azor marked a new start of the tensions in Syria. It seems like it's building those slowly. Let's start with in 2014, the United States entered Syria in the name of fighting ISIS, but in reality, it was to start attacking Assad's military. In 2015, they actually put some boots on the ground, and that they announced that they put some boots on the ground. 2016, they strike Syrian soldiers, but they say it's an accident. In 2017, is this what's going to happen now? Is that what's going to happen? Some more bigger strikes, and then they might say something about the whole false flag that they'll blame either Syria or Iran on, or it goes on to probably some big air bombing, some more a big amount of troops and vehicles on the ground. And wow, we're already at 10:52 right now. And it's a comment I saw right now in the chat room. So, is that an actual TV show? Baconator? That almost sounds like it could be an actual TV show. I know it's not an actual TV show. But Syria as well. That that actually that the United States has returned back twice to that same location since that bombing. They did one where they bombed a bridge there at Deir el-Zor. And a little bit of perspective on that is that this city is in the middle of ISIS territory, and the Syrian military is protecting it. So that's why it's so important. It's like the last little pocket of Syrian government control inside of the eastern Syria. Most of eastern Syria is controlled by ISIS. Most of western Syria is controlled by the Syrian government. Northern Syria is controlled by the Kurds, which I guess you count as the Syrian government because they have the alliances with each other. And interesting enough, there's a pocket of ISIS territory that's controlled, or was a pocket of ISIS territory that was controlled by ISIS right by the Israeli border. I think this still exists, a little pocket of ISIS controlled right by the Israeli border. And actually, I think it's gone now. Maybe it was too obvious. There was like people were like, "Oh wait, that's suspicious." ISIS being in Eastern Syria, that's suspicious because the United States is striking that area supposedly, but apparently they're still staying in control. In fact, they were gaining territory for a while the United States was striking those areas. and over there in Western Syria, there's been more gains by the Syrian government. Aleppo, there's been some more gains. There's been some gains in some other cities, and I've been posting a lot about it on my Facebook page about the Syrian war, and all those little victories here by the Syrian military. And I wonder, and the United States government's probably extra suspicious of me now. They probably think I'm about to go over there and fight for the Syrian government or something like that, because I'm posting all this stuff about these battles that are happening over there, and I actually follow I had the Syrian Arab Army Facebook page. So that's how I share a lot of the stuff from there, and I post about the battles that are happening. And in Syria, also another thing that should be noted: Assad has 70% of the population that supports him. So Assad's obviously not unpopular like the media's claimed him to be. And also another thing about Assad is that Assad, again, respects the minorities of his country. So the minorities of the country like him. The Christian minority of the country likes him. So when you hear all these people, these politicians talk about supporting the Christians of Syria, but yet want to support the rebels, that's obviously garbage. And Syria, like Iran, they also respect the other religious communities inside the country, not just the Muslim communities inside the country. Unlike Saudi Arabia, where promoting anything but Islam inside the country could get you in some severe punishment. If you promote Christianity inside the country. Saudi Arabia, it was the Wahhabism, is very, very strict on their supposed religious ideals. And what I mean by supposed religious ideals is the fact is that they've twisted the Quran, like the Israeli government has. They're not even using the Torah really, but they twisted the Torah and are using the Talmud. And the Talmud being one of the most vile pieces of literature ever wrote. I mean, this completely horrible book of racism and talk about how everybody that's not Jewish is lower, and then they talk about it's a equivalent. What this book is. People talk about Mein Kampf and how that empowered the Nazis. Well, this book empowers the Zionists and what they do and their horrible killings that they do in their country. And talk about hoping that the next podcast works there, Jules. After this show and how much I spouted out, the UCY might get taken off the air for the night. The NSA might intervene here. Also, all the Clinton talk too. Also the UCY chat comes down. Also the UCY stream comes down or something. We got 2 minutes left in the show. Talking about the over there in Syria. I saw more cities been liberated. We had there's these talks now about the United States wants to go in there into Raqqa, where the ISIS capital, self-proclaimed ISIS capital, and liberated, which means that they're going to go in there and protect ISIS. While in Aleppo, they talk about how bad Aleppo is and how the Syrian government's responsible for that, while terrorists hide behind and use the civilian population as human shields. And they talk about, and they support these guys. Do you think they're going to really liberate Raqqa from ISIS? No, they're gonna help fight against the Syrian military. They're gonna fight against the Syrian people and support ISIS. Anyways, we're about to close out the show. So thanks everyone for tuning in to UCY Radio and Voice of Rebellion Radio. It was a great show. Got a lot of ideas out, and definitely
one and no return, and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds them. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. And if I back down now, then